recall correctly, Charles Kirk, he was like, everyone was like, oh yeah, they made fun of Charles Kirk, he's butthurt now, and he's like, oh yeah, I saw the new episode, I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, he's just coping, because he's not funny, and he's like, no, I genuinely thought it was funny, I can take a joke.
Well, and there was all this, like what they were talking, like the whole reason they did that with Trump is because Trump was going to, ban AI to stop them from doing that. And then he didn't. He didn't say a word about it.
I've actually heard from around the grapevine too that the newest episode isn't actually necessarily aimed at Trump. Some people are theorizing it's actually a hidden coded message and it's actually aimed at Paramount.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so no spoilers.
Yeah.
All right, I think we are going. I think we are live. I am seeing no dropped frames. I am not on camera because I feel terrible today. It's one of those days where the pain medicine basically did nothing. But how you doing, Chris?
Okay. Got the rare Monday off. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, and Fun with Facts said that he'd be able to show up today as well. So hopefully we'll see him.
Yeah, I might show up later.
Monday was kind of the day everyone said, so that's what I'm going for. Anyone in the chat yet? Am I actually streaming? It says I'm streaming.
Schism's here. Yep, it's just another manic Monday.
He is. Okay.
Remember that song, right?
Which one?
I said it's just another manic Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually saw a video about the Bengals one time, and it's actually kind of sad what happened to them because they got screwed. The band got screwed over because their producers were like, I forgot her name, but originally it was an all-female group, and they wanted to be like a democratic band where every member had a say in the thing. But their publisher and producers were like, oh no, the lead singer, yeah, she's pretty. Everyone loves her and not you guys, so she's gonna be the focal point, and she's gonna do all the singing and songwriting. You guys just stay in the background and play your instruments.
Yeah, they've always had like way too much control over the artists. It's like,
hang on, my mom's calling.
Dummy, you're a marketing flunky. Your job is to make sure they get the attention and make the money. It's their job to make the artistic decisions. If you know so goddamn much about it, form your own goddamn band. The ones who do understand that because, Alan Parsons, of course, went on to found the Alan Parsons Project. He had produced, I know he produced Dark Side of the Moon. I think he produced Animals. I think he also, I'm not remember if he produced The Wall or not. But, someone who, would go on to show that he knew his chops as far as that sort of thing was going on was just, the greatest thing for Pink Floyd, and he was, of course, one of them, and let them did what they wanted to creatively, and participated in it, and
yeah,
and look at how much better the Monkees were being produced by Chip Douglas instead of, what was his name, Kirshner, the guy who was just trying to control every last little thing that they did.
I feel so bad for the Monkees because everyone makes fun of them, but those guys, they work their butts off to be taken as a serious band, and if I recall correctly, they got screwed over often by it too because like they showed up and they're like, oh yeah, we're all ready to form a band, and they're like, oh yeah, don't worry, all the music's written up, it's all recorded. You guys just got to show up on stage and lip sync it, and they were basically like, what? What do you mean? We're talented musicians. We got everything in line, and you're telling us that you don't actually want musical talent. You just want pretty boys on stage. You there, Shane?
Yeah, they had to really fight for artistic control, and it wasn't just them. Screen Gems had ended up having enough of that producer, and when you've got it from both directions, you're not a good producer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like what you said. It really sucks. It really sucks when producers and editors are like, are like, we're multi-billionaires, so we clearly know what the industry is. It's like, well, no, the whole point of the producer is to get butts in the audience. Your job is to promote us, not to make decisions by saying, hey, let's do this and that.
Yeah.
Mm. It's like, but I can't promote you guys because you don't have a shtick or something. It's like, well, then honestly, and I've actually heard this. Some people say this: if the promoter says, well, you need a shtick or you need something that I can promote, you're doing a crappy job as a marketing guy, because most bands, a lot of them are successful, don't really have a quote unquote shtick. They're just good bands.
Well, and that's because another reason is a lot of it is just the creative control,
Yep.
from the labels. The labels want to own it all. The labels want to run it all. And the
That's the
talent
real
is just, warm bodies that they can
Yep.
exploit.
Yep. That's the real reason why they're big. Why they're big copyright promoters, because it's not about money for the artist. It's money for the it's they want the monopoly on the creative rights.
Yep. That's how we live in a country where John Fogerty was sued for plagiarizing John Fogerty.
Mm.
And people are like, well, he won. It's like, yeah, because the jury found for him. But why was that case ever let in the door?
That's another problem. That's another problem with I have with people who defend like the court system. It's like, well, the guy was found not guilty, and it's like, yeah, but it never should have gone to trial. Like with my case, it should have been an open case of, I may not necessarily have agreed with what Chris did, but it was clearly self-defense. No charges pressed. Nope. Nowadays the general rule is that if someone gets arrested or served a tort letter, they have to go to court. I don't know why. That's just how it is now. Yep.
Just my chat keeps getting disconnected. Am I missing any chats?
Schism wants to know about Mandomni, and he says, "Do you think we should force people who voted for him to stay in New York?" I think the sad reality is that, and this is just the sad reality of the fact, is that when Mandomni's socialist policies fails, and we know they will, people are just gonna say, "Well, that's because he didn't do it right." That's always what it is.
Or it's the Republicans' fault somehow.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's look at the Rumble chat because we got Zen going on. Come on, Rumble chat. There we are. He's asking about Chris Hedges. I'm not sure who that is. And various other videos. Louis Rossman on Andrew Cuomo. I'm subscribed to him. I don't remember seeing that one. The entire music industry deserves its government protection and subsidies taken away. Agreed. Yeah, and Louisiana being on how fucked up the courts are. Speaking of which, you remember when I was talking about the New York Times versus OpenAI, and they were saying how they wanted ChatGPT to hold on to everyone's chats, including deleted chats and private chats and stuff like that, so they could do it. Well, people have been filing for intervention, saying, hey, I've got really personal stuff in there. I've got private stuff there. I got stuff that could be really insecure if it got out. I want to file for intervention just so I know that I'm protected, so you don't use my material, or at least just let me know or something like that. Every single case it's been denied. So they are just not letting them have an inch. People who are not a party to the case. Just people like you and me. We got our private chats there in ChatGPT, and there is now nothing we can do. Because the court is refusing to intervene there.
Speaking of GBT, they did make fun of that in the newest South Park episode where
No
I mean,
spoilers. I
granted,
haven't
it's
seen
not.
it.
I mean, it's not too much spoilers because they used it in the trailer, but basically Randy uses it, uses it to him, try to come up with these new business ideas, and they're so stupid.
Why am I disconnecting from the chat? It keeps saying, see there, it says chat disconnected. Please wait while we try to reconnect you. Successfully connected. Is my live stream going through?
I mean, I'm
Or is
seeing it
my
go
live
through.
stream disconnecting too?
You're live. I'm on YouTube. It's looking live.
Okay. I can never tell from my end because it's my end.
I mean, you've brought it up, before though, and the thing with ChatGPT is that it's a useful tool, but you got to remember that's all it is. It's a tool. It's not actually smart, and the reason why it's telling you all these things is because it's basically telling you what it thinks you want to hear.
Yeah, and a lot of these things are just tricky to kind of tune, and I think we're really going to have to go with this whole personal responsibility thing that people don't seem to like these days. But it's like, if an algorithm does something and it makes you do something crazy, then that's your fault.
Yeah.
It's just an algorithm, people.
Yep.
It's a complex algorithm. It's kind of a black box, but it's still just an algorithm. You put in input, it munches away at it for a while, and it gives you output.
Yeah, some people don't want to take responsibility though. It's the classic line from that old SpongeBob episode, where he goes, "Hey, look, the idea to poison the health inspector was all your idea," and his response is, "Yeah, well you could have talked me out of it." Going back to what Schism said about Mondani, I still can't believe he's in favor. He's in favor of government grocery stores, even though they failed everywhere they've tried.
Yeah.
Even a lot of socialists, do agree. It's like, yeah, that whole thing about having a state-funded grocery store, don't do that. Yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, then he asked them, well, then what do you suggest you do instead? Well, we should have like a farmers co-op, where everyone grows it collectively and they can take it at any time. And I'm like, yeah, what could possibly go wrong?
Didn't they try that in a little place called Plymouth Plantation? I think I remember reading something about that.
Yep.
I think I might have a video or two on that.
Yep.
The real story of Thanksgiving.
Yep. Speaking of your videos, some of your videos are becoming shadow bans. Like, I can't find them. Like, I cannot find them even if I type in literally the exact same quote of the title.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people in the past have said they can do it if they put in the title as well as Shane Gillian. I'm getting reports that it stopped working even with my name.
Yeah, it goes to a news story of police arrested Shane Killian, a different Shane Killian not related to you, for committing a crime, and it's like, that's not who I'm looking for.
Well, and people say it's because you're talking about AI, and it's like, have you seen how many AI videos there are on YouTube? It's getting to the point where it practically has to be an AI video to get anywhere.
Yep.
See, I have never gotten all of these chat disconnect. Ever since that chat, many of them will never change, so they're saying just let them suffer. Are you seeing any chats after that one?
No.
Okay.
It does keep saying chat keeps disconnecting.
Oh, it says it on your end too?
Well, on the video.
Or are you watching my screen?
I'm watching your screen.
Oh, okay.
Ghost Schism says something. He says
Yeah.
algorithms. I don't think social media in itself is the problem. It's it's this algorithm.
Well, yeah, because the algorithms are insane because they kept fucking around with them. Because they're like, oh no, people who are interested in right wing things are getting videos from right wingers and we can't have that. Let's push them over to left wingers. And it made the algorithm insane. They need to go back to like 2014 or something like that. Take the algorithm as it was and just go from there. Because otherwise, I don't think there's any fixing it.
Yeah, speaking of weird algorithms, like I keep getting these Sandy Hook activist videos on my phone from time to time, and it's like, ugh. The whole Sandy Hook thing. It's like, listen, I'm sorry what happened to your kids, people, but you gotta move on. It's over. And tougher gun laws
No,
are not gonna
they
bring your
found a
kids.
cash cow.
Yep.
Change the algorithm back to late 2000s, early 2010s. I mean, it was okay probably till about 2014, 2015. It got really bad. When was the first adpocalypse? Was that 16? That's when
I
it
think
started
like the
getting
first
really bad.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, like the first apocalypse would say probably around the time when Google purchased YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah. Yeah, because then they started saying, okay, we want this and that and this and that.
That's what happens when you cave to advertisers, man.
Mm.
I was telling people even before Elon, just ignore them, give them a middle finger or whatever. They'll come slinking back. He did a GFY to all the advertisers on X. They went, and left. And then they kind of kept, they're coming back one by one. Newsom is getting a lot of positive feedback in the comments. How much of them are bots? I don't think they're bots. I think they're just activists that they basically hired or recruited or whatever. Because he's got a whole new social media team. He is clearly gearing up for a run for president. But those posts I'm seeing from him on X clearly were not written by him.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not any smarter than him. They're still from complete idiots. But they're not written by him.
Mm. I did see this one funny parody of Gavin Newsom, and it was kind of like in the style of a South Park episode, but it was different animation. It was a fan thing, and basically it was Donald Trump having a conversation with Gavin Newsom, and Trump basically asked him, listen, you get so many government subsidies, you have all these taxes, you're one of the richest states in America, why are you not fixing up your state? And Gavin Newsom goes, because if my state gets fixed up, I'll have nothing to campaign on next governor election.
Can he be both written by activists and bot? I mean, it could be, yeah. If the activists are running bots.
That's the sad reality about democracy.
I think that's the only metric there is these days is how many bots are doing things. Because YouTube has all but said that subscribers are just a vanity metric now. They made subscriptions pretty much irrelevant. I don't know. That's what makes it kind of hard. Because, man, I'd love to be raking it in where I could do this full time, but right now it's just gas money. I mean, it's pretty much been just gas money, but
You got to be a pretty lady to make money off of YouTube.
Or an AI.
Yeah, true.
I mean, that's the thing. I'll upload a video. People like it. It gets the views that it gets. Lots of people like it. And I'll get like a bunch of subscribers. And then in my subscriber count where it breaks everything down, yeah, people watch my views at positive subscribers, all these other categories, positive subscribers. I get down to other and it's like -30. So they just made a bunch of other subscribers just go away for no reason that they want to give me. That's the 3 categories I lose them on. 2 of them you can only lose. One is old accounts being closed out. And the other is from the subscription page, because if you're on the subscription page, you've already subscribed. And then there's that other. I have no idea what other is, because it seems like the other categories pretty much take care of everything. But there are never any positives on that, all negatives. And it's like, what the hell is going on there that takes away every bit of progress I've made in subscriptions? And in your analytics, it shows like this gray range, which is the range where, you know, the views that your video usually gets. And of course, what it's going to have is it's going to be a curve. It's going to go up fast and then it's going to level off over time. Well, what you'll see is a video is starting to take off almost like a vertical line. And then like 4 hours later, boom, just level straight off. That is the shadow banning kicking in. And I can tell when someone shares it, because then it starts going up again. But then boom, just levels off. Doesn't curve, doesn't do that nice curve, doesn't plateau, just boom, level straight off. That's the shadow ban, and you can tell. Let's look at what Zen has to say. Oh, I think Zen scrolled off the top. Hang on a second. Got to get back over that window to scroll back up. Another channel we're taking on, the Hysteria podcast. Aaron Ryan is a less shitty version of Samantha Bee and deserving of bottomless contempt. Too bad that Christopher Hitchens died in 2011. He would have annihilated her. It wouldn't last against Thomas Sowell. Yeah, public education is based off of the Prussian model. We've gone over that. ChatGPT, great aid for some things, but severely limited. I'm going to tell you, for $20 to upgrade to Plus, just for 1 month, the level of tech support I got on my computer, fixing it up, getting it working again, going through and just clearing out a lot of the crud, it's running better than it has in years. You cannot, I don't know how much it would take to buy that. You can't get that level of support from Microsoft. The Microsoft engineers don't know. I don't know anyone else who can go in that thoroughly. $20 to ChatGPT just gives you like the best tech support for going in and, you know, fixing your computer, figuring out what's going wrong, getting it going. Because I couldn't even boot up the computer. I couldn't even type. I could type, I could use the keyboard and mouse in the BIOS, so I knew they were working. I knew they were hooked up. As soon as it went into Windows, nothing. And it wouldn't even work in safe mode. It would only work in the safe mode command prompt, where it's the command prompt only. That recovery prompt. ChatGPT was able to talk me through getting the default USB drivers from my Windows 11 laptop, because they're the same apparently, copying them, getting them copied to a USB drive, then plugging in and mounting the USB drive in safe mode in a command prompt. How many people know how to do that? Getting them copied down, rebooted, that worked. And then from there, we were able to troubleshoot everything else and get it going. It was fantastic. Because otherwise, I was looking at a wipe and reload, reloading it from a backup, getting that back up and running. Reinside, it would have been like 3 or 4 days to get fully back up and running. And ChatGPT basically took care of me in a few hours. There was like over the next week or so, still doing some little bits of cleanup when it would crash. Then I'd look at the dump file, using blue screen view, and I could just copy those lines, paste it into ChatGPT, and it would tell me all about them. Look in a Vent viewer, copy all the errors, paste it into ChatGPT, it would tell me all about it. It was amazing.
Sorry.
Donnie Cueto and Adams all belong in jail. Latoya Cantrell, Jeff Landry, John Bell Edwards, Oliver Thomas, etc. Bill Hicks once said, if you work in marketing or advertising, kill yourself. He also said it's not a war on drugs, it's a war on personal freedom. Yeah. Why do I get the feeling that Trump will get Newsom and Booker elected? Ooh, that's scary. I don't know. Newsom isn't really all that popular outside of California.
Ugh. Ooh.
You okay?
Yeah, it's changing seasons, so
Yeah. Well, we got a couple of hurricanes off the shore, and they send in weird stuff that doesn't work well with me. That's why there wasn't a video yesterday. It was just I got it all ready and got all the page all highlighted and marked up and everything for me to do it, and I just wasn't able to do it because the pain levels have been too high. And ironically enough, it's another one about the pain patients. I've looked at a couple of stories from David Manny over on PJ Media, and so he's been covering that. And I was kind of speculating, is he a new pain patient? Is he going through this? He actually reached out to me through email. He found my video, and so we had a nice little email exchange back and forth. And yeah, as I figured, he's a pain patient going through it all, but he's got another one out I was going to go over. So maybe if I can get back to normal or semi-normal, at least tomorrow morning, I can do that. And then hopefully in a couple of months, they'll have my pain clinic restaffed. I just keep thinking, what if someone got it into their head that insulin was bad and started doing this to diabetics? How much of a near revolution do you think there would be? Oh, but diabetics, you're dependent on insulin is the dependency. Refresh
honestly,
my chat,
Honestly, going back to what I said about South Park, that one episode that they did about opioids and Hummels, the thing I find so funny, and I think this is kind of what reflects it in real life, is that kid was an outrage that someone overdosed on opioids. Rather, it was one of his favorite cartoon characters that did it, and many people have pointed out it's like, yeah, nobody really gave a crap about opioid overdose until like many famous celebrities started dying from them. Then the government's like, oh, we got to do something about it.
Yeah, and got to make the Sacklers the scapegoats.
I'll be right back. I gotta get something to drink.
All right. Not saying the Sacklers are good guys, not saying they didn't do nothing wrong. But when you're looking at safe medicines, pharmaceutical opioids are among the safest. There are plenty of medicine, even over the counter, that are more dangerous. See what Tylenol does to your liver. Look that up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's the dumbest, and now look, I'm not a doctor, but it's the dumbest thing people say when they talk about addiction, when they're always discussing about addiction. They're like, well, you see, addiction happens when you take a drug and it causes your brain to release dopamine. No. That's
No,
only a part
that
of
just
what it
happens
is.
when you're enjoying something.
Yeah.
They always do that with video games and everything else. Oh, dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Like dopamine is some kind of evil chemical that your brain does that you should never have or something.
I've actually heard from like an actual person who is a recovering, drug addict that has said people who say that said that people who say that dopamine is the cause of addiction, they clearly have never met a drug addict, because the thing about drug addicts is that at the peak, the worst, at their absolute worst, like at their most bottom, they don't get a dopamine rush from the drug anymore. By that point, it's a chemical dependency, because if they don't take the drug, they become violently sick.
And then they're like, hey, let's just push people over to Suboxone, which A is an opioid, B is not indicated for pain. It doesn't do anything for pain. And C has horrible side effects, including being massively dependency forming, and also rots out your teeth and a bunch of other things. And now they're starting to link gabapentin to dementia.
Yeah, it's just drug warriors are the ultimate gaslighters. I know we said this earlier, but it's like that too, because if you tell, a drug warrior that says, but listen here, man, I have permanent spinal injury, and I have a permanent spinal injury, and without those painkillers, I will be in a catastrophic amount of pain. They go, see, that's the addiction taking in.
The news on Collective Shout Out, they're the ones in Australia, right? That got MasterCard and Visa to stop doing the payment processing for all those games. Is that the one I'm thinking of? I mean, when Collective is right there in the name, it's bad. Let's see what we got here. Collective. Collective Shout. Let's see what the news is. Guardian says MasterCard and Visa are facing backlash. Steam did not respond to us. Madam Savvy is absolutely picking them apart. Yeah, a TNU posted one of those onto the Discord. We approached payment processors because Steam did not respond. Because no one should respond to you.
Yep.
Adult games are forcing the game industry into a spiritual crisis. Shut up, Polygon.
Mm. I never understood the anti-porn crusades because have the anti-porn crusaders have they actually read the Bible? Because there's graphic sexual acts mentioned in the Bible.
Oh, that's pretty much most of Song of Songs.
Yep. It actually reminds me of this one funny thing I saw one time. Where an artist is accused him at his Catholic school of being corrupted by Satan because he drew a super violent picture and all that, and they're like he drew this picture of warriors burning down a village and all that, and they said and they were asking him, then they said what evil say where did you learn this evil satanic image from? He's like, and the guy goes, I read it you told me to draw a scene based on the Bible, and I painted a picture of King David conquering the Philistines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were, one of those groups on X was showing, screenshots of like how horrible this game is and how, overly sexual it is and how it means the degradation of our society and everything else. It's like, I've read worse in Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Read Venus and Adonis, geez. Or Troilus and Cressida.
One could argue Romeo and Juliet is CP.
Yeah, because they were under 18 when they got married.
Yep.
And there was a sex scene.
Yep.
Because Juliet turns 14 over the course of, she starts out 13 and turns 14 over the events, which are only like a week or something like that. So she's like within a week or two of turning 14. When
So many
Friar
people
Lawrence
like to
marries her to Romeo, and then they do the horizontal mambo.
and so many people, love to criticize Romeo and Juliet, and they say Romeo and Juliet were stupid. They did all this recklessly, but people kind of fail to realize that was kind of the whole point of the play. Yeah, they were
in
being
their
stupid.
Early teens. Of course, they're going to do stupid stuff like that.
Yeah. And the point is, the whole reason why they did stupid stuff and why they ended up like that wasn't because wasn't necessarily because they were stupid teens. It was their families, because their families were so obsessed with hating each other. They never stopped to think, oh my god, what are my kids doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember when they were called deleting dislikes off of Biden's videos? Yeah, I remember that. I think they used dopamine because they are miserable and want everyone to share into it. Yep, they're not happy unless everyone's miserable.
Yep.
Let's see. Collective Shout is also associated with NCOSE, which is essentially a religious fundamentalist group of misanthropes. Yeah. And Hello Cold Ramen. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between feminists and fundamentalists these days. The founder of NCOC said the bikinis are exploitation. I think there's something wrong with them mentally. If showing skin by itself is evil, then your head needs examining. Yeah, just like every now and then there's a report of a woman wearing a bikini, at the beach being arrested for indecent exposure because she was wearing a bikini.
Yeah, you need your head examined. Yep. I mean, those old pastors, that were preaching and ranting against homosexuals, and then what happened a couple years later? This preacher was caught trying to solicit a 17-year-old boy for sex.
And like there was there and I forget what the subject was, but it was about Grok, and it was a Grok generated image of this woman in a science fiction, well, more of a science fiction fantasy environment, because she had like leather armor on with, what do you call those metal pieces on the shoulder? But of course,
Shoulder
she had
pallets or
the what?
shoulder pallets or
I think that there's a name for them. I watched Shadiversity, so you'd think some of that would rub off on me, but I don't remember what they're called.
shoulder pauldron. Yeah, pauldrons.
Pauldrons, yeah, that's it, pauldrons. But of course, there was a cutout for her cleavage, and she was fairly gifted. And people are like, oh, what's this pornography doing in my timeline? Hey, why are you having Grok create pornography? And it's like, oh my God, people. I think you've never seen a cleavage before. Geez. You ever been to a beach? You ever been to a ball? A lot of it wasn't showing anything that a ball gown wouldn't. It's going to go right back to Victorian times where, oh no, you can see her shoulder. That's indecent.
Or you can see her thighs. That's indecent.
Oh no, they're complaining about thighs. Admit, what is it about the last 10 years or 15 years or something like that where midriffs are bad all of a sudden? The Bible, I don't think it mentions anything about porn, but it is definitely against fantasizing about women. Cover your ankles, yeah. Let's see what Zen has to say. Louisiana police and sheriffs destroyed more than the Sacklers. Yeah. Probably any given police force. Cody on Kai Magazine, stolen edited graphics and AI art for Sega Genesis games. Snatcher owed its existence to Blade Runner. One woman gets her farm destroyed by the Chinese government. Why would any libertarian want to side with the CCP when shit like this is happening? Why would any libertarian want to side with the CCP? Full stop. Just why would you want to side with the CCP? The war on porn is like the war on drugs, a lie. Porn, sex work, and all drugs should be legal. The child porn hysteria has gotten out of hand. Yes, it has. And most people don't know how the age of consent used to be in most of the world centuries ago. Well, yeah, we were just talking about Romeo and Juliet getting married at 13 or 14. Because remember, the reason why Friar Lawrence had to marry them in secret is that Juliet's parents were going to marry her off to someone else. Marrying off a girl at 13 or 14 was the standard in those days.
And more often than not, her fiance was old enough to be your dad.
Well, that's why you had in Hamlet, because in the Gravedigger scene, they confirmed that Hamlet is 30 and Ophelia is still in secondary school. See, I'm glad that Jimmy Swagger and James Dobson Jr. are no longer with us. It's a pity that there isn't a hell for them to go to. Yeah. Yeah, I read that about James Dobson. He won't be missed. Focus on the family. Focus on your own family.
I mean, I don't know if it was South Park or something else, but I do remember But I do remember one time. But I do remember like seeing this one parody one time where someone was asking a father, saying, why are we so against sex and all that? And it says because our religion dictates that we can't get married, and if we can't have sex, then no one's allowed to have sex. It's like, no, that doesn't mean you gotta ban sex. I think that means you gotta probably maybe reform your religion.
If we're not allowed to have fun, no one is.
AKA the Puritan way of thinking.
Yep.
Yep.
The haunting fear that someone somewhere may be happy.
Yeah, but if you're happy, that means you'll be tempted to sin.
You're supposed to be miserable now so you can be happy in heaven after you die. Oh, that's such a fucking racket, isn't it? I mean, that had to have come about in primitive times where they didn't have any cures for disease or, children dying before too and things like that. Because there's a lot of miserable stuff about them that you can't do anything about. And if you have a civilization like today where we know what causes disease, we can cure many, if not most of them. We can keep children alive, most of the time. We've got things pretty good. The economy's going pretty good. We're well fed. Well, how, if we had never invented religion, how the hell would it get started up today?
That is true, Yeah, that is kind of funny too, that. Yeah, that is true, and many people have pointed it out. Like imagine if Christianity wasn't founded, 3,000 years ago, and Jesus Christ was trying to spread the word of God today. He would be that homeless guy at the end of the street, that everyone brushes by.
Yeah, there was a lady like that went into Heather's shop last week. Just went in and started, preaching at the top of her lungs about save your sins because you're bound for hell and all that. It's like, can we do something about her?
No, you can't. Squatters' rights.
Well, the problem is they're not allowed to physically grab them and take them out.
Yeah.
And they don't have security at her store.
Yep. Fun fact, that's the real reason why the homelessness is a problem in some areas. It's because when homeless people do genuinely, start gathering around in places where they're not welcome and, they're causing, they're polluting the area. People are like saying, well, can't we get rid of them? No, you can't. That's illegal. Well, what are we supposed to do? They're shooting up, they're pooping on the property, and not to mention, I own that property. It's my property. I own it. It's a private park, and they're preventing other people from enjoying it. And the authorities are like, we can't do anything about it. We can't do anything about it. That's your problem. But you told me it's illegal for me to do anything about it. Well, I gotta go.
Oh, there's another security camera footage being shared around where a store owner, used a firearm. Against a couple of thugs were coming in, being all bad. I think one of them had like a baseball bat or some kind of club or something, and they were being all bad. He just grabs his gun, starts going pop, 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 and then they turn tail and run, insert cartoon running noises. They all big and bad until they realize they're armed and willing to shoot back.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's one thing I really, really hate is when people say, well, why did you fight back? Just give it to them, it's not worth, a candy bar or a couple $100. It's like, yeah, and you know what happens when you do that? That encourages them to do it again later.
Well, there was one guy on X who was just saying, if you're being attacked or whatever, the worst thing you can do is fight back. Just let it happen and let the police come save you. And everyone in the comments is like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with people.
Yep, that's the real reason why crime is so rampant, these days. It's not because we're not enforcing enough new rules, or it's not because we're being laissez-faire. It's literally because, methods, the traditional means that people would have to protect their homes and property, they're now being told, oh, you can't do that. If you pull a gun on an intruder, you're threatening their life, and that's assault. It's a sad thing, that's a sad thing. If a guy breaks into your house and he says, I'm gonna rob you and rape your wife and kill your children, and you shoot and kill him in self-defense, who gets arrested? You.
Oh yeah, that happened recently. The guy in New York who was attacked by some thug with a knife and he defended himself, they arrested him.
Yep. This is what we were saying earlier, it's not necessarily the fact that, the person went to court and was found not guilty. The problem is that there's so many cases out there where it never should have gone to court, but the judges go, well, we gotta maintain rule of law, so I know it's ridiculous, but we gotta put him on trial. I've actually heard from some people, from some really old lawyers, who basically said, yeah, back in my day, if there was a guy who shot an intruder in self-defense and everyone agreed it was self-defense, if you brought it to a judge, the judge would tell the district attorney, why the hell are you bringing this man in here? Case dismissed. You need to see me in my office later. Because that's ridiculous. He's just defending his property.
Yep.
Sad reality, and the sad reality is it's stage politics. It's because they don't care. Because the sad reality is that district attorneys and judges, they don't get elected by doing their job fairly. They get elected by saying, look at how many people I put away, or in the case of some more liberal areas, it's like, look at all these people who I let loose. Ain't I a good judge? I mean, okay, yeah, I didn't do proper chafing, so I let people out, who should have stayed in prison, and I kept people who should have been released in prison. But that's not a detail.
In cahoots of these criminal groups for votes, I think you might be right, because Abrego Garcia is in the news again because they brought him back and they're trying to deport him again. And everyone was like, he didn't get due process. He didn't get due process. I covered this on the podcast. I dropped the receipts. He got his day in court. He lost. He appealed. He lost the appeal. He had the opportunity to appeal that to a circuit court. He didn't take him up on it. And he just kept losing because the guy's a thug and a human trafficker. And a wife beater and a child beater. Had his child taken away from him, custody taken away from him. It's like, why are you getting behind this guy? Why is this your poster child?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
The guy you're yeah.
It was the same thing with some of those Black Lives Matters people, where they were getting behind, it's like how this one black person, he did nothing wrong. He was just minding his own business, and the police came out of nowhere and beat him up. And look, I'm all for holding police accountable, and I'm against police brutality. But then you look it up and you find out the police officer was just asking him a simple little question, and rather than just being chill and cool about it, he was being confrontational. He punched the cop and he started doing this. And well, look, even the ACLU will tell you, if the police are wrongfully, treating you, you got to stay calm, and you have to, be collected. Because if you go, screw you, pig, you're a filthy pig, oink, 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 what is that going to do from their point of view? That's only going to tell them, oh yeah, he's confrontational. That's clearly, a sign he's guilty. If you're going to be defiant, do it in a constitutional but also civil manner. Like, perfectly good example, if they say that they want to ask you some questions, you ask, am I being detained? And if they say yes, then say, well, then I'm not going to say anything until I consult a lawyer, okay? And that's it. Leave it at that.
You always have the right to say, I'm not going to answer questions on an attorney.
Yep.
And it helps to know things like if you're in a stop and identify state, like North Carolina isn't, unless you're like operating a motor vehicle and then a couple of other exceptions. If they come up and ask you for identification, you don't have to tell them.
Yep. But again, do it civilly. Don't start ranting and raving and go.
I'm not answering questions without an attorney.
Yep. Yeah, you don't go. Yeah, you don't go. Oh, you fucking pigs again! You quota, come here,
And
I'll
then
kick your ass because then it's like, well, yeah. By that point, it's like, listen, you threatened a cop.
am I free to go or am I being detained?
Yep. Oh yeah, fun. Yeah, fun fact.
And if
I've
they
actually
say you're
heard
not
this.
being detained, am I free to go? You get them to answer, and they say you're free to go, just leave.
Yeah, you can do that even if you're in the interrogation room. If you're in the interrogation room and you ask them, listen, am I under arrest? And you're like, no, you're not under arrest, but we want to ask you some questions. Then you know what? You have every right to get up and just walk out of that interrogation room. And if they say, hey, wait, you got to come back here, you just tell them, get a warrant, and I want to consult a lawyer first. But if I'm free to leave, I'm leaving. And if you try to stop them, well, congratulations, officer, you just committed false imprisonment. Not like they'll do anything, but...
And if they're on your property and they don't have a warrant, then once if they have some sort of suspicion that someone's in distress, once you've taken care of that, you're perfectly within with your rights to say, okay, I'd like to get off my property now, and then they're supposed to leave.
Yep.
Expressing your anger can be translated creatively to assault. Yeah, and they're not supposed to do that, and courts have smacked them down for it, but...
Yep. It's one thing so many police officers so many corrupt police officers also can't seem to get their heads around, and all that is like, well, a serious crime was committed and we have to get a criminal right now, and this is our best lead. It's like, well, let me ask you this. What if you get the wrong person, the person's innocent, and the actual guy is still out there and he commits another crime? By your own logic, you are complacent with it.
In many Latin American countries, politicians give the support of criminals so they can stay in power and continue to profit while giving the criminals immunity from the law. Maybe they're doing that with the Brego Garcia's gang.
I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me,
Yeah, it would explain a lot.
Yep.
If there were politicians who are directly in bed with MS-13 and Hamas and whoever.
It really wouldn't surprise me considering what's going on,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to bring it up because I know it was a kind of shameful period in American history, but the scary thing about the whole Red Scare was that there actually was a little bit of sliver of truth to it, because it was later revealed, through leaked Soviet documents that, yep, there were Soviets, there were communists within the U.S. government and military, and yes, they were working with the Kremlin. They weren't necessarily spies per se, but they were those ideologues that are like, yeah, I think communism is a great way, and then basically once they get into power, they contact the Soviet Union and say, hey, I'm trying to spread communism in America. How do I do that?
Just assume politicians are assholes and you'll be right far more often than you're wrong.
Yep. Oh yeah, I saw this when I was having a discussion with people about lolcows and all that, and we were talking about this one guy that had been arrested for something, but he wasn't convicted and all that, and the guy said, see, I went to court and I was found not guilty, and the person says, no, you weren't found not guilty. The case was thrown out because you're mentally ill, and I want to say, well, listen, I don't condone the person, but that's what innocent until proven guilty is. The only person that can determine your guilt is a jury, and if it never reaches that, then it doesn't matter what it is. If the case is dismissed, you're innocent.
Yep.
That's how it works.
Or you'll say, like, see, Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent. oh, he wasn't innocent. They just found him not guilty. It's like, it's the same thing.
Yep. That's actually the reason why, it's not guilty or innocent, it's guilty or not guilty, because that's the whole point. Until you can prove us beyond a reasonable doubt that this person committed a crime in a court of law, we're going to assume he's completely innocent. People are always saying, juries are biased. Well, they should be biased. They should be more biased and say, listen, until you can show me evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt, I'm going to assume this guy's innocent.
For the jury, that's what they say. They say, my client right now is innocent, or they might, kind of survey them. And it's like, well, what do you think about my client? Do you think he's innocent? And a lot of them will try to say, well, I'm just keeping an open mind. It's got to be proven one way or another. And the defense attorney says, no, that's not how it works. He is innocent. Right now, you are to consider him innocent. And they have to prove otherwise. It's not you prove someone guilty or innocent. You either prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, or they are innocent.
Yep. It's either that or the Japanese system, and trust me, you do not want the Japanese system. Yeah, I think sadly though, the reason why a lot of juries are getting the reputation of being dumb nowadays is because sadly, judges and district attorneys, and to a lesser extent, tort lawyers have gotten good at basically hiding, a juror's rights. Like I've actually heard from some attorneys that have said the best way to get out of jury duty is if it's during the jury selection question, you say I know what my rights and powers as a juror are. They're immediately gonna want you off the jury, because that's the reason why jury nullification isn't used anymore, because many jurors simply don't know that they have that ability.
Yeah, and they're specifically told otherwise.
Yep.
It was like, I was watching one recently, and it was a DUI case. And even in the guy's opening arguments, the defense attorney's opening arguments, he was like, okay, it's driving under the influence. There's two parts of that. There's being under the influence, but there's also driving, operating a motor vehicle. And what had happened was the guy was sleeping in his car. He had pulled over, he'd parked somewhere. Then he'd gone to have some, gone to a pub or something, had a few things to drink, and then went back and slept in his car. And so they, cop comes up in the middle of the night, bangs up on him. I smell alcohol. Get out. I'm giving you a breathalyzer and everything. But he wasn't operating the motor vehicle. And then when it came back and it went to the jury, and the jury came back with a question. And the question was something like, what does it actually need to be operating the motor? Because, oh my God, the cop was saying weird things like, okay, he was sleeping in the car, but his hand might have pushed up against the gear shift, and that would have been operating. It was just crazy. And they were making a big deal. I mean, the prosecutor was making a big deal about that in her closing arguments. And so the jury came back with that question. It's like, okay, what does it actually mean to be operating a motor vehicle? And the defense attorney was like, okay, this is defined in the law. We should just give them the definition that's in the law. And then the judge, who was just completely on the prosecutor's side, wanted to get that guilty verdict. She was like, well, I think we should just tell them. No, I'm just going to tell them it's up to them. And if they think there's a danger, that he could be operating motor, they just get him off the street. It was like, Your Honor, that's not the law. She was like, well, I'm going to tell them that anyway. And then it backfired because the jury came back not guilty. Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about when he was in the voir dire for a jury, they sent him out because he was talking about how he gave a class on critical thinking, which included things like eyewitness evidence is the least reliable form of evidence there is.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't want him telling that.
Yep.
You just say that, yes, I make educational videos, including many about our justice system, including about our 1,000-year-old, long-fought, hard-won fight for the jury to judge the law as well as the facts in any case they sit on. You're going to be out the door, and they'll probably get rid of the rest of them too. They don't want them knowing that. But it is absolutely true. You absolutely have the right, and some would say even the duty, to judge the law as well as well as the facts in any case you sit on.
I mean, it shouldn't have to be, but I really think there needs to be a constitutional amendment that flat out it says that at any point throughout a criminal or a tort trial, the law that you're accused of being breaking of can be brought into question at any point. Because sadly, some, as you pointed out, some defense attorneys, try to tell that to the jury, saying, listen, the law my client is accused of being broken is stupid. He didn't hurt anyone. It's a very stupid law that doesn't work. I think you should let him go. And they say, hey, that has nothing to do with the case.
Well, the Dems going crazy over gerrymandered. They are the last ones to complain about. I made a meme a couple of years ago that I've resurrected here. And it's North Carolina's districts, as they have been drawn by the Democrats. It was the one I used from like 2010, but that had been the case for like 20 years, where you have like the little crinkly district that goes up by 85, and then the other weird shaped district that goes from the Triad down through Carroll, all the weird things. The ones that always top the lists whenever anyone in the country, wrote a story about gerrymandering, they would use like 3 of North Carolina's districts. And now the districts are in a much more sane format that the state Supreme Court said was not gerrymandered. And the Democrats are all like, they gerrymandered it, it's racist, it's like they took away the I-85 district. When even Sandra Day O'Connor, that was a road too far even for her. So yeah, that was the meme I made. It's like, this is not, according to Democrats, this is not gerrymandering, but this is make it make sense. And I also found, and this is not in Texas's constitution, but it's in California's, the districts are not to be drawn with any regards to, favoring or disfavoring any political party. So what Gavin Newsom is talking about is absolutely illegal in California.
Mm-hmm.
He is openly talking about breaking the law. And, the people of California have said that it's okay. It's this independent commission that does the redistricting. It's not the legislature and the governor. It's this independent commission. And he wants to claw that back too. Oh yeah. California's already had the heck gerrymandered out of it. The state is like 45% Republican. But you wouldn't know that, from looking at their, politicians and everything. They're, it's got to be all Democrat because of the way they gerrymandered it.
Yep.
And I'm not saying Republicans don't gerrymander. I mean, they do. But if you're going to complain about gerrymandering, about this state being gerrymandered, because all they do is say, well, because we lost seats. Is that it? You're just sore losers that you lost seats? My challenge is, tell me a way to tell the difference between redistricting that is not gerrymandered, that causes you to lose seats, and redistricting that is gerrymandered. Show me how to tell the difference.
I agree with you. I think there just needs to be universal law that everyone needs to be applied that says that you can't switch the districts. You're just... Because, I really don't understand what the whole point of that is anyway. Why?
Well, because it's all based on population. And population dynamics change. People are born, people move into the country, people move from one place to another. And so it's in the Constitution that after every census, you got to figure that out again. Where all the congressional districts are, because they need to be the same population. And then a lot of states do the same thing with their legislative districts. You know, they have to be more or less the same population size. And now I think they're going to have to redraw the districts here in North Carolina again because the Democrats won't shut up about it and they keep taking it to court. It's like, we just went through this. They were fine. State Supreme Court said they were fine. So then they're going to redraw it, and then they're probably going to lose even more seats. Then they'll be whining about that. Well, yeah, because there are a number of different ways to do the algorithms, and some side or the other is going to lose seats. But I mean, do you want to go roughly circular? There's good reasons to respect county lines when you're drawing out the districts. Because, you know, county boards of election, you know, run the elections for their county and the precincts in their county. And so it's going to be a lot better if you don't have a county that's divided into, 17 districts, So respect county borders wherever possible. You definitely want to consider urban-rural boundaries. Where do you draw the line between a good work ethic and workaholism? I don't know. No one can tell me what workaholic is supposed to mean. I mean, unless it's like you're neglecting your family or something like that.
Yeah.
I think today just anything resembling a good work ethic would be welcome.
I mean, look, I don't want to victim blame or anything, but the sad reality is that I've heard the reason why a lot of places are struggling to find work is simply because we've unfortunately kind of taught our kids, to be so entitled that they don't have a work ethic.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen it at my job. I've seen tons of people, that think they can literally just come and go as they please,
Oh, yeah. Heather sees that at her work.
Yep. I've heard a lot of people are saying that. Like, they're saying, like, I'm literally getting these people coming in, and then, I see them walking out the door, and they're like, where are you going? Your shift doesn't end for another 4 hours. It's like, but I did all the stuff you asked me to do. It's like, yeah, and there's other... Yeah, and if you do all your stuff, then come to me, and I'll find something else for you to do.
Yeah, infidel, but the problem is when you start trying to draw definitions based on the extremes. Because the extremes can't define anything. Now, let's see. Basically, Zen is saying every socialist leader ever should be incarcerated. And just because McCarthy was right about Soviet spies doesn't mean jail them without trial, due process, etc.
Well, I know that. I'm just saying,
Never ever trust a prosecutor, DAs included.
I did rant. Now, granted, I didn't rant. I didn't say this, when I was on public trial, but I did rant to my attorney one time, and I basically said, why the fuck do we even have defense attorneys and prosecutors? Why do we even have them? And he was like, well, then who's going to represent the state? It's like the state isn't supposed to have representation. It's supposed to represent the people. Like, seriously, when you really think about it, there's literally no point for the prosecutor to have other than to guarantee that someone's going to go to jail if a crime's been committed. Well, who's going to represent the community? The frickin' jury.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, who's going to represent the court? That's the judge. Yeah.
Oh, the California raisins. I remember them. That was cringe. The baseline should be at the very least do what is stated in the contract. Yeah, but if the contract is like, you come here, you do what we tell you for 8 hours, and then you leave, that's pretty straightforward. They'll say, well, I got this done. I guess I'm just going to leave. Or, oh, I'm feeling a little tired. I guess I'll leave.
I mean, to be fair, I've left early from work too because, at the job I work at, sometimes, it's extremely weird, but we have had days where it's super duper slow and they really don't need me. But here's the thing. I still ask permission first,
Yeah.
I don't just get up and go. I just don't get up and go and I say, oh, well, there's nothing for me to do. I'm just going to head out. No, I flat out say, hey, listen, there's really nothing for me to do. If I stay here, I'm just wasting time and money. Is it okay if I just head out? And if they say, you know what, you're right, it's bad. It's really slow today. You can head out. Then I go.
Yeah, but they'll say to my wife, like, I'm tired. I've been here since 7 a.m. She's like, well, I've been here since 5 a.m. I want to go home.
Yeah.
And they're working her over, and then they let someone else go off early. It's like, why do they get to go off early and I have to work over?
Yep. Yeah, so many people like to hate on the managers, but they fail to realize, you have some privileges from not being a manager.
Yeah, my wife doesn't want to be a manager.
Yeah. What's one benefit about not being the manager is you don't got to deal with the Karens. See, if a Karen comes up to you,
you have to deal with the Karens.
Well, I mean, to a degree, but the thing is that if a Karen comes up to you and says, "Oh, this service stinks. You're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong," you have the luxury of saying, "Okay, ma'am, I'll go get my manager and he'll talk it over with you." Then you bring the manager and just go, "She's your problem now. I'm going back to work."
Yeah, but then they call corporate and complain about her.
Yep.
She's like, I'm not even supposed to be out here. I'm the accountant. I got tills to count. I got to carry forward, man. The good workers always get more work because they're good workers and they know the work will then be done. Yeah. But that also means they're taking advantage of more.
I will agree that is one thing that, some companies really need to stop doing. They need to stop saying, they need to stop taking a look at a hard-earned worker and say, oh, he's working really hard. That's clearly a sign that he'll do whatever we tell him to do, so let's have him do all this stuff. It's like, no, because then you're taking advantage of him. And if you want to give him more work or something, ask him, Yeah, don't be like, oh yeah, he was supposed to leave leave an hour ago, but someone called in and I don't want to cover it, so I'm gonna have him do it. It's like, then you're just taking advantage of him, you know?
Yeah.
Mm. And like I said, you're basically rewarding laziness because, like, if an employee is lazy and it's like, yeah, I can't assign him that because he's not going to do it, well, then you should fire him. You don't get your other one to do it. But then again, that's one of the reasons why I really think the state shouldn't be involved in labor because the issues with labor is a complicated issue, and it's not as simple as, oh yeah, it's workers versus the bosses.
They're constantly knocking on her door because, she has to lock it when she has the safe open. Like, why are you knocking? He's like, well, you locked it. It's like, yes, I locked it because the safe is open. I can't have it unlocked with the safe open. Then she has to close the safe and lock it shut. Then then she has to go back, lock the door again when that's over, and then go back and open the safe again. It's like, just let me do this.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that is kind of on the company too, is when, like, they clearly have a company policy, but they're told, "Oh yeah, but just disregard it because we don't want that person to write a bad review of us." It's like, then why bother having the policy in there?
Yeah, that's what Heather says.
Because you're not, look, basically trying to appease a Karen by going against your company policy. That's the equivalent of trying to get a kid to stop throwing a tantrum by giving him a candy bar, because it's like, well, if I give him a candy bar, he'll stop crying. Yeah, and you know what he's going to do the next time he really, really wants a candy bar? He's going to start crying.
Yeah, operant conditioning. They give into all these Karens, and they're like, "Oh, just give her the refund. Just give her the refund." So, okay, it's not up to my wife; it's up to them. But then they wonder why the store's not making money.
Yep. And I mean, I never witnessed it personally, but I did used to work at Walmart for a couple months, and I did speak to some of my coworkers, and it's also bad, like, when they try to bring, like, the bad stories and all that, I just really wish people would just express more empathy. It's like, like, even if a store does generally have a stupid policy, why are you taking it out on the guy in front of you? Like, let's say, if the store policy does have a return policy that's really unfair and stupid, at the end of the day, it's not the guy behind their fault. It's not even the manager's fault. Like, listen, that's what they tell you. They say, listen, I don't like it any more than you do, but if you have a problem, you're going to have to call our corporate office and tell them how much you don't like it, because there's nothing I can do.
Well, Infidel, here's the problem with public sector unions. Because who are they negotiating with? Like the teachers union, they're going to be, negotiating with the school board. Who's the school board? They're full of teachers union members. The union is on both sides of the negotiating table.
Yeah, that's the reason. That's the reason why they were actually, if I recall correctly, there were actually some cases where they were flat out banned from unionizing, and it was for that express purpose, because you see, private sector unions, makes a lot of sense because they're representing the workers and all that, but a public sector union is the government,
Except now they don't really represent the workers nowadays.
Oh yeah. I've heard tons of stories from people that have said, that are like, oh yeah, when we got unionized, I thought, oh yeah, I'm finally gonna get more benefits. I'm gonna get my job, and they're kind of looking back at it and they're like, you know what? I think we got scammed by that union, because I still haven't gotten my vacation. I still haven't gotten my job. And now, not only do I lose some of my paycheck in taxes, I automatically lose some of my paycheck because I got to pay the union fee.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie.
And then they find out they basically have, like before, you can just go up to the boss if you got a problem, and maybe you can work it out with the boss. Now the boss just says, talk to your union rep, because the boss isn't allowed to talk it over with you. Got to go through the union rep. Guess how much the union rep cares?
Yeah.
The boss at least wants good work out of you and has the motivation to get good employees. Union rep doesn't care.
Yeah, fun fact about public sector unions and all that. That's actually one of the reasons why, in the few areas, now granted, I'm a little skeptical about the people who say teachers don't make a good enough wage. I'm a little skeptical about that. But another reason too why, teachers don't make, as much money as some people think they should do, It's simply because here's the thing. Teachers can't be paid based on their performance. You can be the best teacher in the world, like you've taken, troubled students, at a history of learning, and you've made them learn. You're gonna get paid just like everyone else. And if you say, it's like, hey, listen, I'm putting all this extra effort into being the best teacher I can, but it is taking a toll on me. Can I get a pay raise? What happens? Well, we got to talk to the union, because if you're gonna get a pay raise, everyone else has to get a pay raise.
What was that? This was years ago. There was one like big corporation where they tried that, and basically all their best people quit. The union reps now have a job that has nothing to do with either side. No, it's about the unions.
Yep.
They don't act for the benefit of the employee. They act for their own benefit, for the benefit of the unions. Because they're corporatized and monopolized.
Yeah, people, there's so many unions that are saying, we're against big super corporations, and then you take a look at the union. And another thing, too, I hate about a lot of labor unions is that it's like, let's say, there is a genuine benefit that comes from unionizing, so people say, okay, let's form, so some workers for an individual company decide, hey, and they talk with them, and they talk with, with their boss, and they say, hey, let's form a union here. What happens? The state comes in and says, oh, you can't form your own union. You have to join a specific union,
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't, like, let's say if your wife, owned a small store and her workers decide to unionize and she's okay with it, the state would be like, oh, no, you can't form a Heather's workers union. Your workers need to join, the United Federal Confederation of Retail Workers Unions.
Yeah, and then look what, because they say, oh, it's all the lobbyists. Look at how big a lobby the unions are.
Oh, yeah. That's another reason too why I agree, why I don't buy it for a minute that some of those unions are saying, well, we just want to protect the workers, because it's like, well, if you generally cared about the workers, you would let them make their own decision, and if they did unionize, you'd let them form their own little union within their company. But no, you tell them, it's like, no, you have to unionize, and you must unionize with us. Well, what if they don't like your union? What if they think, they want to form their own union? They don't want competition.
Oh, it looks like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are getting sick of the antics of these district court judges. When, the Trump administration tries to, fire people or, cancel the grants or whatever. And Gorsuch said, this is now the third time in a matter of weeks this court has had to intercede in a case squarely controlled by one of its precedents. When this court issues a decision, it constitutes a precedent that commands respect in lower courts. And Gorsuch said, lower court judges may sometimes disagree with this court's decisions, but they are never free to defy them.
Yeah, Schism says another reason why a lot of young people are complaining about work is because we gave them unrealistic expectations. Oh, yep, that is so true.
Oh, yeah.
I remember growing up in high school, they told us you can do anything you put your mind to, but as the old saying goes, before you can run, you got to know how to walk, and before you can walk, you got to know how to crawl, and they don't teach you how to crawl.
Yep.
They say, oh, crawling, that's for losers. That's for people who drop out of high school. You can run straight out of high school, no lessons needed if you just believe in yourself. It's like, nope, that's not how it works,
And if you just, go into massive debt getting a 4-year degree, you'll make so much money. No, you won't.
Yeah. I did see that one funny joke, which showed a guy, working at a dockyard, and he's like, oh, I hate this job. I should have gone to college. Then I would have had a better job. And then it shows a guy in a cubicle, and he's getting yelled at by one boss, while the other boss is saying, yeah, we need you to stay overnight and do extra work and this and that. And the guy's thinking, 6 years of university for this.
Yep.
You know, they say the grass is always greener, you know. And that's another thing too, is like, you know, they say, oh yeah, if you go to university, you'll ride the gravy train and you'll get a high paying job. No, those high paying jobs are high paying because they're demanding. Yeah. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure your wife can attest to this. You know, do you really think managers just sit in their office all day, type on the computer, and make phone calls? No, they're working.
Valterine Declare, yeah, I love her.
I've never heard of her.
I think I've quoted her a couple of times on the podcast. You know, in the This Week's Quote part. For people getting a journalism degree, 100,000 in debt. At that point, I think you would be better off working at McDonald's. Yeah, probably. And they're like, well, go into a STEM field. It's like, well, you can make money in a STEM field, but only if you go on to get a master's or a PhD. You're not going to make money just with a bachelor's.
And to be fair, the biggest thing I hate about college, and this is why I really don't want to go back, is because another thing too, it's not just a matter of, you know, the money too. It's also about, this is the thing that doesn't get talked about, it's the time too. Because like, I understand, you know, for some, you know, jobs, you know, you need, you know, years of training and practice, but there's tons of jobs where it's like, oh yeah, if you want to get it, you got to go to school for 4 years and you got to take all these elective courses. But what if I just want to learn how to program computers? I don't need to be taking all this extra stuff, you know.
Yeah, just go to a trade school.
Yeah. Or hell,
my daughter got her cosmetology degree and now has her own salon.
Yeah. Or hell, you know, some jobs, you know, they'll automatically train you if during the job interview you demonstrate that, you know, it's like, listen, I didn't go to school, but I'm really passionate about this, and I have a general understanding of this, and I'm willing to learn anything new that's there. They might say, you know what, you do have potential. Tell you what, we'll take you in on we'll take you in on as a temp, and we'll give you skills, and if you show you truly have what you got, we'll promote you to full time and all that.
But it's like, I've talked to some people, they'll tell me they're interviewing someone with a master's degree from North Carolina State, like one of the best engineering colleges in the country. As part of their interview, okay, here's a breadboard, here's some electronic parts, here's the schematic, wire the board for me. And they can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I could do that when I was 12.
It's like, you know, like if I wanted to learn how to program computers, it's like, okay, I gotta quit. You know, it's like, I want to ask the college on campus, okay, so I just want to be a master computer programmer, right? Yeah. Why do I gotta take an American literature course for computing? You know, what does reading about American literature have to do with that? It's like, well, you gotta take an elective. Why? If that has nothing to do with what I'm trying to learn, why should I have to take it? I think it's just that. I think the whole reason why they make you stay for several years, it's part of that. It's so they can justify taking you charging you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they say, well, look at all this stuff we're doing for you.
Lazy HR people who don't know anything about the job they're hiring for. Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, I feel bad for people that work in HR. I've heard some horror stories about HR. Like, I saw this one comedy show one time where the HR person was talking to a new hiree, and they were doing like all these fancy, you know, weasel words and talking about, you know, company policy and all that. And the guy's like, okay, I'm sorry, no offense, but that I have absolutely no freaking clue what you're talking about. And the HR person goes, well, here, let me lay you in a secret. I have no freaking clue what this shit means. Means either this is just what they tell me to tell the new hirees.
Yeah, you got so many people like that. Well, like the Cracker Barrel people. They're just
Yep.
in the news now. You got all these people. They're executives, they're CEOs, they're HR flunkies, they're marketing flunkies. And it's like they feel like, I don't need to know anything about this business or what it does. You know, they just do what they want.
Yeah, marketing. Yeah, marketing. I've heard that's another one of those things where on paper it actually seems like a practical. It seems like a practical thing until you actually really think about it. I've heard some people say like when you really think about it, you actually find out that marketing is kind of iffy. Like it's got some general use, but it doesn't mean. But the fact that you have a master's degree in marketing doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be an excellent salesman, because there's other factors that go into advertising a product, you know.
West Point, you graduate debt free. Yeah, but don't you have like an obligation to the military for like so many years?
Yeah, plus if I recall correctly, you can't get into West Point unless you have political connections nowadays. You got to have either you either got to have someone within the military to recommend you, or you got to petition like a senator or someone in the federal government to vouch for you.
There was the concept that a degreed person had certain worldly knowledge. Now it's partially to keep niche degree holders employed. Yeah.
Yep.
They got a degree in basket weaving and they want to get paid the same as everyone else.
Yep. You know, the funny thing is that when my grandpa was still alive, I was talking to him about school and all that, and he told me this funny joke ever. He said, well, you know, when I was a young man getting into the work field, one of my first bosses told me the funniest joke ever. He had this new guy come in, and he said, "Okay, I'm ready for my new job, So the boss hands him a broom. Brian hands him a broom and says, "Okay, start sweeping." And the person was indeed saying, "They're like, what? I went to school for 4 years and I spent thousands of dollars. And I spent thousands of dollars to mop the floor." And the boss looks at him and says, "Oh yeah, I'm totally sorry. Here, give me that mop back, and I'll show you how to mop the floor first." Yeah. And that's another problem too with universities. You know, it's not that I don't think college is bad. I think it's just that the way it is in its current form, it's the same thing with the public school system. It's based on an extremely outdated, obsolete, method, and there needs to be newer methods of teaching people. You know.
It's not going to happen as long as government's in charge of them, because they don't have any incentive. You know, if schools are actually, if schools had market incentives, to teach kids properly, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing well, you'd see them shape up. But man, now it's, you're failing all these students, and all these students are doing crappy. Here, you must need more money. Here, have more money.
Oh yeah, that's another. Yeah, that's the thing that one John Stossel episode taught me. Taught me very importantly, is like so many people say it's like they're trying to shut this school down. It's like, yeah, it's failing, but it's our school. They're shutting it down. It's like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, and actually one person brought it back too. It's like, and like, imagine if you went to a restaurant and you ordered some chicken, and as you're cutting open the chicken before you take a bite, you notice it's pink on in the middle, and when you tell the chef just blows you off like that. Are you gonna want to eat there again?
Exactly.
Yeah, why should I have to pay, for a school that's not teaching kids? Or better yet, why am I paying for a school when I don't have children? Because that's another thing too. Schools are funded by taxpayers' dollars, and what if I don't have kids and that go to school? Why should I have to pay for it? Give private schools some credit. The only people who pay for private school are people who are actually using the service.
Finding Zens. How do I convince people that all drugs, porn, and sex work should be decriminalized or legalized? Just sit down and explain to them the non-aggression principle.
Yep.
And let them see how terrible, because it doesn't work.
And the funny irony too about prostitution is that, well, yes, it was always looked down upon, and it wasn't necessarily seen as a good career choice. It was generally, historically, it was tolerated, and it was seen as one of those things where it's like, yeah, we don't like it, but hey, it's a job.
I think I've got
You know, it,
the PDF file in case I need to get the reference for it, but there was but it turns out Rhode Island had accidentally legalized pornography, and they realized that, and then it was a few years until the state could rectify and they could pass a new law. So for a few years there, prostitution was legal in Rhode Island, and so they're like, okay, let's do a study on that. And they found out that women, rapes and sexual assaults on women went down, violence on women went down. They were having to arrest fewer pimps. Whereas on the flip side, look what happened when they shut down Backpage. Well, labor unions are basically a grift at this point, no different from tariffs, drug prohibitionists, forced birth fanatics, and alternative medicine. College is a scam unless you plan on going into medicine, law, or the clergy. John Bell Edwards graduated from West Point. Look into his family someday. I'm glad I spent my 8th grade to my 3rd semester of high school in a private school. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, going back to the thing of what you said about prostitution, another similar thing that happened is because I've read, that back in the old days, they used to be much stricter with the war on drugs, and they basically said, oh yeah, if a patient comes into your hospital and they're suffering from a drug overdose, from an illegal substance, you legally have to tell the cops, and you have to send them to jail. And what happened? People were dying of drug overdoses because they weren't going to the hospital. When they decriminalized that particular behavior, they saw fewer deaths from drug overdose, because when people overdosed, they would call the doctor, and now they're actually getting treatment.
And they're even letting them have Narcan, I think it's called these days, where if you have
Narcan,
you're overdosing on fentanyl, you give them Narcan and you can save their lives.
Yep. Yeah, going back to what you said about prostitution, the reason why prostitutes, get robbed, raped, and abused by their pimps is because the job they're doing is illegal. So if they go to the cops and say my pimp stole my money, and then he violated me, yeah, they'll arrest the pimp, but they'll arrest her too.
With modern methods, they could teach at the speed of the individual learners, but the system is so ingrained, they want to treat groups of kids are exactly the same, which was the whole point. Force them all through the meat grinder, make them all the same.
Yep.
That's that. If you've seen Pink Floyd, The Wall, when they do another Brick in the Wall part 2, that's what that's all about. When they're wearing the masks and falling into the meat grinder. That's what that's all about.
I mean, that's why even though I'm a pretty smart guy, and I think I had my IQ tested, and I have a slight above average IQ, that's the reason why I barely passed high school. It's not because I was stupid or didn't know the answers. It was literally because I hated school. I just hated, I hated being forced to do repetitive homework. I hated, I hated the slow pace of it. I felt like I was in prison half the time.
Yeah. This is going to come as a huge surprise to people, but I've never been one to conform that easily.
Yep.
Shocking, I know. Public education is one of the worst things we imported from Prussia in the 19th century. The other two are corporal punishment in the prison system. Yeah, it seems like people just aren't treated as individuals these days. Even as adults, everyone's got to shove you into a category and treat you like you're a statistic. People should remember, statistically, we all have one breast and one testicle. There's no such thing as the average person.
Yeah, that brings me to another thing I really hate hearing with some, people that think that the economy can manage is when they say, well, the math leads to this, and math never lies. Well, math doesn't tell you anything.
Well, yeah, because garbage in, garbage out. Are you doing the right math? Are you using the right inputs?
Like all math does is tell you 2 + 2 = 4. If you're looking for more context or like what exactly makes 2 + 2 + 4, that's no longer a math issue. That's like a philosophy issue. But
And another way they, teach it wrong in schools is they just teach you about the abstract things like 2 + 2 = 4. But mathematics is primarily about problem solving. I want to do something. How do I do it? Math tells you how, but you got to know how to work it.
yep.
It's not
Oh,
these
hang on, my mom's
esoteric
calling me.
formulas and rules and weird things you do with numbers. It's all there for a reason. And what do the students always say? They always say, well, when am I ever going to use it? And the teachers don't like that, but what the kid is really saying is, how is this relevant to me? How can I utilize it? What is the power that it gives me? And that's what they're starved for. That's what kids really want. They want to know what's going to help them. And the math teachers don't tell them that, maybe because they don't even know themselves.
Sorry, my mom interrupted me, but yeah, going back. I was
Yeah.
about to say, to quote to quote that pirate captain from Pirates of the Caribbean, when it comes to math, math isn't rules, they're guidelines.
Math doesn't tell you what to do. You decide what you want to do, and then math gives you the power to do it.
Yeah, it's again like what I said, they're not, math isn't rule, they're just guidelines.
I think probably the only teacher more useless than a math teacher is an English teacher. Because they'll teach you all
Yeah.
sorts of grammar rules that don't exist.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, like the classic ain't isn't a word. Yes it is. Well, it's only used by illiterates. It's not used by professionals. Nope. Many famous authors use the word ain't all the time.
Never end a sentence in a preposition. Never split infinitives.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that classic tale. A snooty British teacher is sitting on a train next to a Texas gentleman. The Texas gentleman just looks over her and says, "Howdy, ma'am. Where are y'all heading? All heading." And she snorts and goes, "Oh, you stupid Americans are always ending in propositions. You know proper English speaking. You can't end with a proposition." So the Texas gentleman thinks it over and he says, "My apologies. Where are y'all heading to, bitch?"
I before E except after C. when they finished digitizing the Oxford English Dictionary, they were thinking, great, now we can do studies on these words and all these rules. And one of the first ones they did was I before E except after C. And they found out that there were literally more English words that violated the rule than conformed to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen rules where I comes after E even when it's not after C, and it doesn't make an A sound. Oh yeah,
Like
and another
science or C's or weird. It messed me up because I was spelling C's and weird wrong because I was following the rules they gave me. I'm like, well, that's an exception. Well, then it's not much of a rule, is it?
Or another classic rule: you can't have a double negative. Double negative. Yeah. Why can't you have a double negative? Well, because Latin doesn't have double negatives. Okay, is the root word that this word comes from Latin? No, it comes from Old French, which in turn comes from an old barbarian language. So then it's not Latin.
Or it's from Norse or whatever. Yeah, the term is negative concord, where the other negative is an emphasizer, not canceling it out. But they'll tell you it always cancels it out. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Yep. I mean, hell, in one of the few episodes of Adam Ruins Everything where he was actually right, he even did that when he was bringing up that whole grammar thing. He was actually showing excerpts from well-respected books and authors who were breaking all the grammar rules. And no, they weren't doing it, to challenge the norms or the narratives. They were literally just talking and writing the way they were taught to talk and write.
Yeah, using the language as it is.
Yep. You know what this also kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of alcohol drinking. There are like so many alcohol snobs that say like this is what a cocktail is and you can't substitute it. And a pretty famous example is the martini. So many people say, listen, if you use vodka in a martini and not gin, then it is not a martini, it is a kangaroo kicker. Stop talking about it. Well, guess what? I looked it up, and there are recipe books describing martini cocktails, and they are called martinis, and they go all the way back, to the 1800s. And what is the ingredient on the list? Vodka, and no mention of gin.
And it's supposed to be shaken, not stirred, but they've done tests, and they couldn't tell the difference between the ones that were shaken and the ones that were stirred. It doesn't matter.
It's the other way around. You're supposed to stir it, not shake it, because if you shake it, it bruises the gin. But they've done studies that have shown. But they've done studies that have shown that, a shaken martini is going to be a little bit cloudier and it's going to be a little colder, but it's taste-wise, it's still the same. You can't bruise gin. It doesn't have blood vessels, or those chemical discolorations that can cause some fruit to bruise. You can't bruise it. I think it's just alcoholics trying to justify the fact that they're functioning alcoholics, and they're trying to say, no, I'm not dependent on alcohol. It's fancy.
They can't tell the difference between red wine and white wine with red food coloring.
Yep. Or they can't tell the difference, between a rare well-aged French wine from a vineyard that's been aged for 20 years versus a cheap $10 bottle of wine you bought from a gas station. Yeah.
Yep. You take a box wine, you put it in a fancy bottle, they can't tell the difference.
Part of me wonders if maybe that's what Jesus did when he turned water into wine. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's my divine powers. He secretly has a carton of Fresno behind his back,
and just mix some of it in the water.
Yep. I mean, that's what South Park did. When they had an episode of Jesus and he demonstrated the water into wine. Why? It's like, watch as I turn this water into wine. He puts it behind his back and he swaps the water with a glass of wine. Also, I think King of the Hill did a similar episode too, where Bobby reenacts all of the miracles of Jesus, and by pointing out that yeah, a lot of the stuff that people said Jesus did, a lot of stage magicians can do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They all do walking on water. They all do water to wine.
Yep.
Walk through walls.
Yep.
Raise the dead. What's the saw a woman in half trick? That's a raising the dead trick.
Yep. Or another thing too is that it's like, or another thing too that we go is it's like, but the Bible said Jesus went up to a man who was dead, touched him, and he woke up and he was no longer dead. Well, you got to remember that was back during the day when they didn't know much anything about better, and we now know that. Just because a person has their eyes closed, they're not moving, and they're not breathing, doesn't necessarily mean they're dead.
Oh, they knew that. That was even a common trope at the time in a lot of satires. That they knew it was possible that you could appear dead and not really be dead. I got Pliny the Elder wrote about, I think he was a proconsul, that he had died and they had him on the funeral pyre. All of a sudden he started screaming and they couldn't get it off before he choked to death and he died on the pyre. But
I mean, yeah, that's why if you look at a lot of those old historical funerary processions, it's actually very common that, before you actually bury the person, you wait a day or two and check for signs of decomposition, because if after a day or two, if you come back, if the body is stiff and it's starting to smell, okay, person's dead, it's safe to bury them, versus, where if you just went, oh, yep, they're dead, and you buried them, you risk burying them alive.
Have you ever wondered, because the Gospels disagree with all sorts of details about this, but they all agree that the women went to Jesus' tomb on Sunday morning. You ever wondered why? That's tradition. You visit the tomb over the next few days, and yeah, part of it's grieving, part of it's ritual, but part of it was because of the very real possibility that they might not be dead. And it was at least enough of a fear that you could at least allay, the grieving person's fear that, okay, now they're not being buried alive. But I mean, you don't want your loved one to wake up in the middle of the tomb with the stone rolled in front of you going, oh my God, let me out of here.
Yep. Yeah, so honestly, sorry people, but if there is like a documented, confirmed account of that happening, that's probably what it was. It was probably just a person that fell into a coma, and everyone assumed, oh, yep, he's dead. Let's bury him. Let's put him in the tomb. And then through some miracle, they woke from the coma, and they're like, hey, what the hell? Where the hell am I? Because it happens,
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing: we have much more sophisticated medicine back then, and there are still plenty of famous cases of people, who come in, they're unconscious, and they do a thorough body scan, and they say, yep, the person has no brain activity, they're brain dead, and the family's like, okay, take him off life support then, and what happens shortly after they take off of life support? The person starts gasping, they wake up, and they're like, what the hell happened,
And it wasn't just a Jewish tradition. It was throughout the Greco-Roman world, and even going back to like Babylon and Sumeria. You visited the tomb every so often for the next few days. And yet, when it was Jesus, oh, it must be because he was resurrected. See, that's proof. The empty tomb is proof. People, there are a billion empty tombs. Get over it. All right, I think we are coming up on 2 hours. Grave bells was at least a design, yeah, because there were people who were scared to death of being buried alive.
Fun fact: George Washington's grave originally had grave bells because he was afraid of being alive, and he requested, to have a grave bell with me.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see if we can get any final parting thoughts, Chris, or anything before we leave this up.
Nah, I'm good. I'm kind of
I
tired
made
to
it
be
through
honest.
2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're clearly exhausted, and I don't have the same problem that you have. But my body's weird when the climate starts changing. I start getting woozy and all that. So
Yeah, it's when the weather changes is the worst because
yep.
yeah, it's better when it's warm. It's better when the humidity's low. It's better when the pressure's high. But I mean, even in that situation, if it goes there quickly, that
Yep.
can be a problem. So,
Yep.
all right. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to Fighting Zen over on Rumble. Thanks to we have Inquisitive Infidel. We have SKM. And we had someone else too. Who do we have? Katie. Katie, I don't remember seeing you before, so welcome if this is your first time. Thanks for joining me. Thanks again, Chris. And until next time, stay strong